Well, here we are again for another Saturday morning Kenny Cars and Coffee. And over the next half hour, I think we're going to answer more of your questions. And I have some questions on bushings, so I'm going to do some bushing tech and then try to touch on some driving techniques, which is going to be really hard remotely, but we'll give that a shot. And also, I want to mention that we've been talking about this 5-day transforming your driving experience. We were going to have it started on the 30th. It's going to be 5 evenings in a row, about an hour each evening. But with everything that's going on, we've kind of pushed it back a little bit because we have some things to do, and we're shut down like everybody else. Although we still are available to take orders and ship product that we have in stock. We're having a little trouble getting things from our suppliers. So where do we start today? We got some questions, some good questions, really good questions today. Let's see, this is from Edward, who wants to know about roll cage placement, and along with that is Carl, who's on a limited budget and asks if an auto power bolt-in cage would be a positive upgrade, and then ballast placement and seat position. Absolutely. I mean, if welding cages are nice, but for some people they're impractical. So a bolt-in cage like the auto power is very good. I mean, it's better than nothing at all. I think a lot better than nothing at all. And then as far as ballast placement, if it's for a racing series, they're going to dictate where you can put ballast. But if it's not, you almost need to play around with your car and see where the best ballast position is. Now you have a choice of go ahead. You have cords over there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a little awkward this morning. You've got a choice of different places, and you can actually put some ballast if you're scanning the car and see what difference it makes. We always put the battery, which is really heavy, on the right rear corner of the car because that's always the lightest corner. Another good place is the passenger back seat floor. You want to have the ballast behind where you are as a driver, if possible, and off to the right, because like I say, the right rear is always the lightest part of the car. And seat position, again, if it's a sanctioning body, they may dictate. If it isn't, you always want to put your seat as far back and as low as possible. Now, sometimes that's impractical, but the whole idea behind that is you're taking your weight and you're moving it back in the car to help the balance of the car. Anytime you can move weight to the back, that's a good thing. And here's a really good question, but before that, I want to go back to the transforming your driving experience in Speed Therapy Society. Man, you guys are really, really coming to life on Speed Therapy Society. I just love all the posts that are going up, pictures of cars. Keep it coming. Carrie tells me in this Facebook stuff they have thumbs up and they got hearts. Well, I'm not really thinking about hearts, but we can look at their heart-shaped wrenches. How about that? But anyway, we're
So give me some.
Yeah, so send some to me. In the workshop over 5 days, what I'm planning on covering, and this is always, susceptible to how long I talk and other things that come up, but the first day is going to be a crucial first step in transforming your driving experience. The second day is building your performance platform, part 1, which is suspension geometry and handling. Third day is building your performance platform, part 2, which is brakes, wheels, tires, cooling, safety. And day 4, we want to talk about dialing in the car for maximum performance. And day 5, tips, tricks, and answer a lot of questions. So it should be really kind of cool because in essence, what I'm doing is I'm trying to give you as much information of how I do things and why I do things that I've learned over, gosh, how many years? I'm not going to tell you how many years.
I have a quick question about cages.
There's a quick question about cages.
Christopher Sauter would like to know who made Ruby's cage.
Christopher Sauter would like to know who made Ruby's cage. Coffee time. And that was actually done by a really good shop up in Green Bay. I've got a really close friend that worked with us on Ruby that lives in Green Bay, and the shop up there he used Beyond Redline. is the shop that did it in Green Bay, Wisconsin. They're great guys and they do really good work. Is there another question?
That was it.
Okay, that was it. Oh, anybody that's ever seen the cage on a Ruby is really kind of trick. What we did on the driver's side is that the top door bar was actually on kind of like a shotgun retainer thing, so I could reach over and pull it back and then push the top bar out. So it's much easier in and out of the car. And we did that as part of a club cage because we found that older drivers who like to eat or are big guys have a really hard time climbing in and out over door bars in cages. So we made it kind of called the gentleman's bar, where you can actually swing it out and it's much easier to get into the car, and then you just pull it back, it automatically just snaps into place. So that was pretty cool. We should probably put it on our website at some time. Here's a really good question. In fact, it's really pertinent because for some reason this has all come up just in the last month or so, this whole subject. Dan asked, he said he's got a 2011 GT500 and bolt-on power and suspension upgrades, lighter wheels, softer tires, can pull like 1.1 Gs in Canada Corner. Canada Corner is at Road America, for those who don't know. And I wonder he's wondering if he should consider a C-clip eliminators on his stock rear end. And he says, for some reason, I'm not interested in spinning off into the sand pits backwards at 120 miles an hour while I watch my wheels and axle go rolling past me. That's a really good question, and it kind of leads into some other things. C-clip eliminators, I'm sure you've seen those for the 8.8 axles. Now, let me go back and explain what C-clips are and why they're there. On the 8.8, the way that the axles are retained into the differential is the axles will push in from the outside, and then with the center bar out of the differential for positive traction, the axles will slide in, and there's a groove, and there's a little C-clip that drops onto the axle, and then you pull them back, and on both sides, and then the pin for the differential slides in between to keep them in place. Now that's kind of really cool and easy setup. The problem becomes when you're going around corners. Now if you're using stock rear brakes, it's fine. They're designed for the C-clip type axles. But if you switch to like a big brake package, what you're going to find is you're going to like be going around a couple of curves and you go to hit the brakes and your pedal goes all the way to the floor. The reason for that is called pad knockback. What happens is when you start loading the axle back and forth, that axle will move just slightly in and out. There's play in there with the C-clip. And the OE calipers are designed to move with the axle, so that's not a problem. But as soon as you hard mount that caliper, the axle is going to be moving a little bit, and it's going to be pushing the pads with it, which is why you get pad knockback. We've come up with a couple of different things. We found that the wave track differential has minimal axle movement, so that's what we used on a Ruby with the racing calipers on the back, and that worked really well. C-clip eliminators are going outside of the axle so you don't have a C-clip. Well, that's basically for drag racing. They're not really approved for road racing because they won't stand up to the loads of road racing. It's strictly a live axle, a drag racing type of fix for the C-clips. So what's the person to do? Well, there's two solutions that we've done for a lot of customers. The first is called a full floater. And a full floater is kind of cool in a way because what it does is you cut off the end of the axle where your bearing is, and this floater welds on, and in essence the bearing and the hub are mounted to the axle. So you can, once it's on there, you just spin it and it spins around, and then you drop the axle in, it's splined on both ends. So you've got the plate for the brakes, and the rotor just will not move at all. It's just rock solid. That's one method for the 8.8. The other thing that we've done recently, we have more interest in, is for David's car out in California. I had Strange build a custom 9-inch rear end. Now Strange, you hear me talk about them before. Strange custom builds my shocks for me. Preston 95s, but they're also a really big drag racing company, and they're big into axles, all kinds of rear axles. And the Ford 9-inch is kind of like the gold standard of racing. It's been around for years. They use it in Trans Am, they use it in NASCAR, they use it just about everywhere. It's a rock solid piece of equipment. What we've done is I've had Strange custom build to my specifications a 9-inch rear end specifically for track and road racing. And we've done a lot of interesting things like the housing. If you've never seen a 9-inch rear end on your 8.8 on your car, you take the back plate off and there's the differential, the gears. Well, on a 9-inch, there's an entire housing assembly that sits on the front and pops out. That's got the ring and pinion and a differential all in this one housing. On our custom 9-inch, we've gone to aluminum housing to lock a little weight off. Also 35 spline axle. I mean, the biggest axle you can get for the 8.8 is 31 spline. So if the guys are running really big power, we've gone to a 35 spline axle. And it's got the pickup points we use for our suspension, so it's very, very easy, just swap in and swap out. And I mean, it's rock solid. Now, it is heavier, I'll grant you that, but anybody that's got big power, you're not going to break it. And going around the corner, no matter how much you load into it, you're not going to lose an axle. I mean, it's very rare something like that happens. So that's kind of like the roundabout way is they don't use C-clip eliminators. They don't hold the durability and strength for track and road racing. There's one other solution too that we did on Old Blue. I don't know if anybody's seen Old Blue. That's my '93 Fox Body World Challenge car. What we did is we actually took on the 8.8 axle and we welded on the Ford 9-inch ends. And in the Ford 9-inch, the bearing actually presses onto the axle. And then there's a plate, you slide the axle in, the bearing in, there's a plate that holds it all in place. We put the 9-inch axle bracket ends on the 8.8 and it has the same effect. We could run the big brakes on the back and it doesn't knock back. I can tell you on the IRS, 99 to 04 IRS cars, you never ever want to go to a big brake package no matter what. And the reason for that is we learned that the hard way back in World Challenge in 2004, I think, with our World Challenge GT car. We kept losing pedal, getting pedal knockback. We thought it was the front, we ended up being it was the rear. We're getting all the really big knockback. And we started looking at things and we mounted the spindle, the upright, to a beam in the shop, and it moved really easily. So the whole thing's flexing. So we strengthened the upright. We put some strengthening in the back, some strengthening in the back, and then we were testing up at Groton with Ford, and all of a sudden, down sort of like in the bottom, the axle and wheel and everything just goes flying. What we found is once we stiffened the upright, the next weak point was the bearing. And it was so much, this is going to blow your mind, it was so much movement in so much deflection from the bearing that the rotor actually came over and ate its way through the bottom rod end on the spindle, ate right through that, and it just came flying apart. That's a lot of movement. So we just don't put anything big on the back. Now we do have access to one of our customers and friends, Doug Vanderbrink, is making us billet uprights. So they are available, but it's not a complete easy bolt on off. But the reason he built them, he's a drifter. We call him Drifter Doug, and he had to have a solid upright in the back for drifting, as you can well imagine. So I think I went on longer than I was planning on talking about C-clip eliminators, but I hope I filled you into some more information. These are the trying days, and we're kind of locked down, like I'm sure a lot of you are. And if you got some friends that are just bored to death, shoot them off a note, invite them not only to the Free Saturday Live, but also to the Speed Therapy Society. And man, there's some great comments in there. I mean, we got to do something to kind of fill up the time for people just locked in the house, and that'll lead through the Speed Therapy Society. That'll lead into the 5-day. So be sure to invite your friends. And I think there might be a link there where you can do that. Okay, I need my little checklist down here. Thank you. Thank you. We're up to the tech segment. Today I'm going to talk about suspension bushings, the different types, and the appropriate use for each type. Now, for discussion purposes, we're going to talk about the factory rubber bushing, urethane, Delrin, and rod ends. Those are kind of like the main things. And everybody's familiar with urethane. Actually, the full name is polyurethane. I mean, that's like polyurethane. Yeah, got to have that. Everybody has to have that. Here's an example of this is actually a SN95 rear lower control arm. As you can see, it's got the urethane bushings front and rear. And in a minute, I'm going to tell you why that's bad. Polyurethane is a good bushing material if it's moving up and down. An example is this is a front bushing for the S197 front control arm, and when movement is back and forth, straight up and down, this is a great piece to use because it eliminates the softness of the factory bushing, but it's not so super hard. But there is still some dampening of NVH. That's noise, vibration, and harshness. So I mean, it's really good. We use that. We get all our for like front control arms. We use polyurethane. Our IRS upper lower control arms, we use polyurethane, and that's because when the motion's up and down, this is perfect. Now, for something like this on a lower control arm, to me, that's a drag racing setup. Because if you're going straight forward, I mean, the polyurethane isn't going to move. It's going to be solid, so it's going to give you good forward movement. The issue comes into going around a corner. Now, if I try to twist this, there's no way I can twist that. I mean, it's like rock solid. So what happens when you try to go around a corner with all polyurethane bushings on the back, the axle's not going to move very much, very little. And when the axle stops moving, you run out of suspension, and the car gets loose. A really good example of that, this goes back a ways, is in 1988, the Celine race cars. Now, we ran stuck with the factory soft bushings in the back, just so we could get the back of the car to work. And whoever took over the car in 1988, the cars in 1988, they said, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm talking about. So they went and they put all polyurethane bushings in the back. First day of testing, from what I hear from some of the drivers, the cars were absolutely undrivable. And that's because the polyurethane doesn't work sideways, and you just flat run out of suspension, and when you do, you get loose. Also, another thing that people don't realize is on the rear of the cars, you've got these rubber baby buggy bumpers. It's kind of like an axle snubber. If you have a lowered car and you still retain the full size of the axle snubber, once the car rolls over and contacts that snubber, you run out of suspension and the car gets loose. Discovered that in the Celine days too, that the car would get loose and spin off, so we just pulled those off, no problem. Even on the S197s, for street cars, we'll cut them way down to be really short, but on the track cars, we not only take them completely out, but on the S197 axle, there's kind of like a little bracket that sticks out behind it that the bumper mounts on. We actually cut that off, so that doesn't hit the frame either, so we have a lot of axle movement. So that's why I don't like polyurethane for rear suspensions. Great for front suspensions, great for IRS. Anytime you've got an up and down movement, it works great. That's polyurethane. Now, the other thing that people are probably familiar with is Delrin. Delrin is a polymer that's rock hard. You can hear that compared to big difference. This is good. I only recommend it in certain specific applications. For one, it's a lot more expensive. And it's rock hard, so it doesn't press into the control arms like a urethane bushing would do. But it supplies a super solid, again, if we're doing this up and down movement, it's perfect because it's super rock solid. Also, it has some anti-friction qualities to it, so it works really good. And then the one that's the absolute best is rod ends. And I can see how many different ways I can move that rod end, which is why on my rear suspension we use all rod ends. And the reason for that is we get maximum articulation in the axle. The axle is free to move as quickly as it can. So that's why we get good traction in the back, because we're letting the axle move, we're letting the axle work. Now, I'm just using this as an example. This is, I had to go through and find a loose one to show you this. The rod ends that we use in our control arms, when they're brand new, they're pretty stiff. But because they are Teflon lined, they will loosen up enough that they'll move, but they won't rattle and clang. So that's a rod end. Now, what we did have done for a couple of customers that didn't want all rod ends at the back. They wanted some polyurethane for NVH. And what we did is we did a control arm. Now, this is the older one with a 3/4 rod end. But we put a urethane bushing at the back. And again, the bushings aren't in here, but it's offset just like we do with the rod end bushings. But now you're saying, wait a second. He said not to use urethane for the rear suspension because it doesn't move. Well, yeah. Being really clever about this, I don't know if you can see that, we actually take and undercut the bushing so that there's a hard center part for going forward, but then also there's some ability for the axle, for the control arm to pivot a little bit. So I don't think you'll see anybody else do that. That's kind of unique to us. So that kind of, you can talk about factory rubber. Factory rubber is the best for movement, but it's also moves around too much. But here's something interesting. On the S197 rear axle, if you can see in this bushing, there's actually air slots. And those are there to let the bushing move. They're not solid rubber all the way around. Just about, say, maybe 50% is solid rubber, and the rest is air pockets to let the axle move. So that shows you even Ford realizes that the axles have to move for the rear suspension to articulate and work. So I don't know if we have any more questions coming in, but if not, I think we'll touch on it a little bit before we stop. I'm actually taking time to drink my coffee these days. A lot of people are asking about driving techniques. Now, this is going to be really hard.
I have one.
We got one more question before driving techniques.
Okay, this is from Christopher Stoddard. He wonders if there's any recommendations on maintaining rod ends over the long term. Do they need occasional overhaul? Also, thoughts on life expectancy.
The question is maintaining rod ends. What do you have to do to maintain them and the life expectancy? Well, the thing about rod ends, that reminds me of something I forgot to tell you about on urethane too. The thing on rod ends is, what I recommend is occasional cleaning with like brake clean. Just clean them off, make sure they're clean. And as far as life expectancy, that kind of all boils down to how much they're used. We use the super good, high grade rod ends with Teflon line, and they'll go a long ways as long as you keep them clean. When they start to wear, what happens is if they're dirty, you get little pieces of dust and sand, and they get inside and they act like sandpaper. So that's all you need to do, just blast them off with a little brake clean and never ever lubricate them. The rod ends we use are self-lubricating with Teflon. And if you lubricate them, what's going to happen is that's going to be a dust magnet, and dust magnet equals sandpaper, and that'll wear them out really fast. So keeping them clean, and they'll last a long time. So that's the best thing on that. But what I forgot to tell you on urethane, but super, super important, is this stuff. This is special urethane lube. And urethane, you have to have this lube on the inside. This is a sway bar bushing, and again, up and down, so it's good urethane application. And this even has little grooves inside to retain the lube. If you do not lubricate your urethane bushings, they're going to squeak and squawk. And that's the last thing you want. So you always want to use lube on the inside and just a little bit on the face, not a lot, because again we're talking dust magnet. So just a little bit on the faces and inside. Now, I'll tell you another little thing. This stuff is like nasty. It's like super sticky, super gooey, and once you get it on your hands, it's like on there forever. Brake clean won't take it off. The only thing that really will take it off is WD-40 for some reason. That seems to be the thing that'll take it off. But what I always do is I put gloves on. It's just as easy. Just take a pair of disposable gloves, get them all greased up, and then throw the gloves away. I also, when I do, getting back to rod ends, we talked about that last week, putting a little bit of anti-seize on there. I always wear gloves for that. And the reason is, on the anti-seize bottle, no matter how much I wipe it off, every time I use it to wipe it off, I still get anti-seize on my fingers when I'm using it. So that's why I just use gloves. And when they get too dirty, throw them away. The same thing if you're doing this gooey, ooey, sticky stuff on urethane bushings. Get some disposable gloves. Otherwise, you're going to be frustrated trying to get your hands clean because the stuff is sticky. Okay, if there's no more questions.
We have one more.
Oh, one more. Hold on.
This is sort of related. First of all, Bob Jones says he has your rear lower control arms with the rod ends on for over 10 years, and they still seem to be going strong. He does clean them every couple times a year.
Okay, who was that?
That was Bob Jones.
Okay, Bob Jones just sent in. He's got our rod ends, and he cleans them periodically, and he's had them for 10 years. So, keep them clean. They're high-quality rod end. They'll last.
And Chris Melletu.
And Chris?
Yeah, he has a 2010 Shelby. He has a little noise coming from the back, a little clunky noise. Is that normal?
A 2010 Shelby with clunky noise.
With a Kenny Graham suspension. With
our suspension. I'm thinking. Well, the first thing you do is make sure everything's tight and take a look at all the rod ends and make sure they didn't get dusty and get loose. But a clunk is usually something to do with the drive line. I think the best way to handle that is why don't we get Chris signed up with one of my 15-minute consults? Because I got more questions to ask rather than on here. But clunks are usually drive line, and it could be drive shaft, it could be U-joints or velocity joints, it could be backlash in the differential. I mean, I could go on and on how many different things it could be. And actually, Herstifer, I had a video conference with him just yesterday, and he's got something funky going on in the back, and it's really hard for me to diagnose things remotely. But I just went through the litany of things, and when it comes to stuff like that, it's process of elimination. You think of what could be the most likely thing to make a noise, and you do that first. It's you just eliminate possibilities until you get to the one where the problem is. Sometimes you find it fast, sometimes it takes a while, but there's no magic thing to do that. So Chris, why don't we get you signed up with a 15-minute, one of my 15-minute conferences, and we can talk about that. And also for people that do have complex questions, we are taking a limited number of my 15-minute consults, just because I need to ask questions to give you the good answers.
And comment if they want to sign up.
And
comment if they want to sign up.
Oh, if you want to sign up for one of those 15-minute, just comment on there, and Carrie will take care of that. Okay, moving on to driving. Now again, this is something that's really hard to relay remotely. But what I'm going to start with is, we had a question. Someone asked, what is the best and quickest way to learn a new track? Okay, here's what I do. Now, everything we talk about is things that I do, that I've learned over the years. If possible, walk the track. You'll be amazed what you can see when you walk the track. At the very least, take a golf cart around slowly, because it'll just give you a perspective that you don't really get going fast in the car. That's tip number one. Tip number two, on your first couple of outlaps in your first session, go for ultra, super, ultra late apexes. Like almost drive past the corner and come around to it. That's going to give you a better perspective of how the corner is and how it lines up for the next corner. Because every corner, you're setting this corner up for the next corner and that corner for the next corner. So by using the ultra late apex, that gives you the opportunity to get a better picture of just what's on the other side of the corner. And that leads into, with the way I've designed my suspension, and we'll get into this in the 5-day, is for super late apex, quick rotation, quick back to the gas. And when I say quick rotation and late apex, that also calls for super late braking. With the anti-squat and anti-dive, we've talked about that a little bit before. We'll go over more in the 5-day. My cars, when it comes up to the corner and you hit the binders, they don't pop up like everybody else. They come down flat. That's because the anti-dive in front and anti-squat in the back. Because they do that, you can brake a lot later than anybody else. And the way I've designed it is, and when I engineered the suspension, I always look at braking first. Why? Because in racing, that is your best opportunity to overtake somebody, is under braking. If you can out-brake somebody into a corner, the corner is yours. So always look at braking first. Also with a Mustang, we talked about it being a drag race car. So by late braking, you just extended the straightaway 50, 100 feet more. And with the late braking, you're going deeper in the corner and then rotating the car quickly and hitting a late apex. By late apex, what I mean is you're going around the corner, you've seen the inside, there's a little curve that goes all the way around. And a lot of the track days, they'll put maybe a cone at the apex, and typically in like race cars, you're going to come around the corner, you're going to hit the apex in the middle and track out. Well, with a Mustang, just the way they work, that's really not the quickest way through there, because the car is going to push from the apex off all the time. So by using a late apex, late braking, and getting the car to rotate, and I get the rotate part comes from the front suspension geometry, you can shoot for the late apex. So where those curbs are, there's going to be the beginning of the curb, the middle, which is most people apex, and the end of the curb. Late apex to me is your new apex becomes the end of that curb. So I mean, that's how late you come around the corner. But by doing that, you're going to find that you're totally lined up down for the next corner. It's when I have people do that, it's really hard to do because the natural instinct for people is to early apex. And the way you can know if you early apexed, after you go through the apex and the car wants to push off the track, your apex was too early. I mean, that's a sign, because the only thing it can do is either go off the track or lift off the gas to get it to settle and come back in. Well, you lift off the gas and somebody just went past you. So the whole late apex thing is the way the suspension goes: late braking, quick rotation, back to the gas, and with late apex, I mean, you're flying by the time you hit the apex and your corner off. You're just flying. That's why my cars are so fast on track, and they beat cars with a lot bigger horsepower. I think there's a video, I don't know if any people seen at Road America, where at turn 14, that's the last turn before the front straightaway at Road America, I actually had to get off the gas to keep from running into a Viper. And when I finally got around the corner a little bit and he gave me the point by, I hit the gas, I flew past him, and I held that Viper off all the way down the straightaway. This is my 2012 GT with basically a Boss motor with cold air and headers. That's it, stock motor. And I held him off all the way down the straightaway. So I mean, that's the value of good mid-corner, late apex, good mid-corner speed, and exit off. So my best driving tip is late apex first. And when you're doing it for the first time on a track, go super late apex and take your time. Really take your time on the first couple of laps to see what's going on, see where the bumps are, see if there's anything kind of weird. And what's going to happen is all these hot shoe guys are going to want to fly past you. Just point them by. You're looking after yourself. You're not watching them. Get them out of your way so you can go. Take your time and don't crawl around, because they'll yell at you. But take a slow lap, and then every lap just pick up your speed. And what you're going to find is later on you're going to fly past the guys that you pointed by earlier. So late apex, go gently, walk the track if you can, and that's kind of like my best tips for now. I think we'll go into more depth when we have the 5-day, because I'll have a whiteboard back here so I can kind of draw pretty pictures. Although I'm going to heads up, I am a terrible drawer, so it's going to be some really ugly pictures, but you should be able to get the gist. So if we don't have any more live questions coming in.
We do.
Oh, we do have live questions. Nobody has mentioned the picture I have back here. We threw that in just to kind of turn this a little bit. Just a little bit of pizzazz. I've got an art collection of some really cool prints. Now this one, this is one of a bunch of Nicholas Watts, And the title of this is All American Victory. And this is Dan Gurney and A.J. Foyt, the winning car at Le Mans. And it's actually signed, obviously, by the artist, but it's also signed by Dan Gurney and Phil Hill. Well, wait a second. Phil Hill isn't in a GT40. You're right. Phil Hill is in this Chaparral that's right behind, trying to catch him, but never does. So we're going to try to put a different picture up occasionally, and because I got some really cool pictures in my office. I just love this stuff. So, okay, now we got questions.
Okay, sure. Richard Thurston is asking any recommendation to eliminate wheel hop in a 2001 SVT Cobra.
Oh boy, now this is the most asked question about the SN95 Cobras with IRS, wheel hop. The wheel hop is caused by not one, but a whole bunch of different factors. Soft bushings, geometry, the differential mounting, all that play into it. You know, soft bushings, soft shocks, marginal springs. We completely do an IRS back end. We eliminate a lot of the wheel hop unless somebody gets really crazy. And we do that through a number of things. We have like steps to improving the IRS. Our first step is, it's kind of like a package number one, and it's the forward torque brace where the differential sits on forward torque brace. It is kind of thin tubing. We have a super heavy duty forward torque brace. That's number one. Secondly, they have rubber bushings in the differential where it mounts onto it. I come up with a really ingenious replacement, and a lot of people, there's urethane bushings you can use, which are fine. Our aluminum bushings are actually, I don't have any handy, I'll show you, we'll do that in the 5-day. We've gone to aluminum bushing, but what I've done is, on the top part of it, it's like a stack of washers, aluminum washers, small, wide, small, wide, small, wide, small, wide. And there's two reasons for that. Number one, by changing the stack from top to bottom, you can adjust the pinion angle. And the second reason is because it's aluminum, it will pull some heat out of the differential. And IRS differentials are just noted for overheating because it's a small aluminum case with no place to go for the heat because it is all mounted to rubber. Here's the package, and you can see how there's more washers in there than you can see. But you can see how we got different size washers. The thick part is is basically where the differential will sit on at OE height. But then we stack these washers so the differential actually sits on the top, which increases the pinion angle. Which in 99 to 02, there was a whole lot of driveline vibration with IRS cars, and we found by raising the pinion angle, we pretty much eliminated that. When the Ford dealers were doing this all kinds of crazy stuff and couldn't get rid of it. So that's first part of it. And then the other part of the first kit is what we call a rear steer kit. And a rear steer kit takes and it moves the inner pickup point for the tow rod down. And the reason for that is the IRS car going around a corner, you get to a certain point of roll and both rear wheels steer the wrong way. If you're going right, you get to a certain point of roll, both rear wheels steer left, which makes the car loose. So by moving it down, that takes some of it away. And people are telling us on a dyno, you can actually see the wheels moving back and forth, but when we put the rear steer kit in there, they don't move as much. When we do the full geometry upgrade on the carrier, we moved it even further, we pretty much eliminate that. So that's kind of the first part of it. You're getting rid of the axle, the differential movement, but a lot of it is still in the springs and shocks and bushings. In our rear suspension, we have a tubular lower control arm, and we convert to a coilover, either single or double adjustable coilover, for two reasons. One, we talked about this before, I can adjust spring rate. And secondly, you got adjustment so you can pretty much fine tune the shock for how you're driving, and we'll do more of that in the 5-day. But when we do that, we do the first part with the forward torque brace bushings and rear steer kit, and then do a lower control arm with coilover because of the spring rate we're going to run. The shock dampening is a whole lot more than the factory, and that really takes a lot of the wheel hop out. And then the going all the way, when we take the carrier and we move all the pickup points to change the geometry, we add anti-squat, and it's hard to add anti-squat to an IRS car, which is why you should never drag race with an IRS car. They're not made for that. You want to go drag race, you get a live axle. But we put in as much anti-squat in the back as I can for an IRS car, so that also helps eliminate some of the wheel hop and also gives you better bite. So I mean, it's a long story, but it's very common. I mean, everybody complains about the axle hop in a IRS car, and it's a combination of springs, bushings, shocks, and geometry. All those kind of feed into how it axle hops. One more?
Oh, I have a couple of comments.
Couple of comments.
Yeah. Okay, Tim Thomasak says that his home track is Waterford Hills. Every weekend in the summer, I get to ride my bicycle with cycling club. So you know what I'm thinking about, going around a 1.4 mile course at 15 to 20 miles an hour.
Oh, that's a great point. Was it Tim?
Tim, yeah.
Tim Thomasak says his home track is Waterford Hills up in Michigan, in the Detroit area. And if you don't know about that, it's kind of like it's almost a go-kart track, but it's kind of fun. It's it's short, it's complex, gives you a lot of driving technique to work on. But he's in a cycling club, and they cycle around the track. Well, he said, you know what I'm thinking about? I'm going 15 miles an hour on my bicycle. You know what I'm thinking about, going around the track. So there's another good example. You can ride your bike around a track too if you got one of those. If it's a big, long track, you don't have a lot of time. Anything slow at the beginning to learn the track.
And then regarding driving again, Bob Jones comments that sometimes you can see things from the spectator areas that you can't see on a track.
Oh, that's another good point from Bob Jones. Is sometimes you can see things from the spectator area that you can't see on track. That's another good tip. Is if you have an opportunity, go around to different corners, especially the ones that are the hardest for you, and watch how other people are doing it. And you're going to sit there and you're going to say, that guy really screwed it up, and then another one, oh, but that guy was really fast. So you can pick up some driving tips by watching other people, especially in the corners you're having the most problem with. And when we're racing, as far as corners, the corner that we focus on first and the most is the last corner before the longest straightaway. That is the most important corner of the track. And if you're doing track driving as well, because that, you get off that, you get a good launch off that corner, you got way more speed at the end of the straightaway than anybody else. So, going around and watching how other people do the corners that you struggle with could give you some helpful tips on that.
And then Brad Grissom says that one of the most important things Ken taught me was smooth is fast.
Yeah, Brad says one of the most important things that Ken taught me is smooth is fast. And yeah, when we did our own driving schools, I stressed everybody, smooth, smooth, smooth. You need to focus on smooth first, because once you get smooth, fast will come. It's pretty amazing. I've had the tracks like Mid-Ohio. I've had to tell people, slow down and you'll go faster. And sure enough, they slow down, they stop trying to overdrive, they focus on being smooth. Boom, magic, they're quicker. So smooth is good. I think we had signs when we did our driving schools back in the 90s maybe. We had signs all around that said smooth is good. So that's another good point. Smooth, smooth, smooth. One more?
Yep, Chris Militu. Driving track days, a lot of times they'll have parade laps, and you can drive slower on the track and take advantage of it.
Oh, that's another good tip. Chris said on some of these track days they'll have, over lunchtime, they'll have parade laps. Another great opportunity to drive around the track slow, because you see more things going slow than you see going fast. I mean, a lot of these guys come right out of the back, just want to charge right around the first session. They're not going to be very quick later on. And it's something else we'll talk about in the 5-day is when you go to a track day, the entire first morning of the first day is learning the track and getting the car set up. You get the car set up, then you go fast. That's what I do. I mean, we spend the entire first morning of track days working on tire pressures, through the parameter tire temperature thing, which I've talked about and we'll talk about more, and then adjusting the camber if we need to, getting the car set up, and then from then on just go like the Dickens. So is that?
There's one more question.
One more question.
That's it. So Mike Morrison, what is your thoughts, what is it you like about Mossport, and what are your thoughts to get the best time there?
What do I like about Mossport, and my thoughts to get the best time there? Well, what I like about Mossport the most is we won the 24 Hours of Canada in 1986 in GT class, and we won the 24 Hours of Canada in 1987 in GT class. So when I go to Mossport, I win. Also, it was the last professional race of my late son, Paul, was at Mossport, and I can't talk about that, I'll get too emotional. But as far as going fast, I've never driven Mossport. I've just seen it, but the trick to going fast is all the way down the bottom, that last turn before the big straightaway. You get those 2 turns right, and you're going to be quick. The other thing is getting through turn 2 cleanly, using 1 to get through 2. That gives you a shot down to 3, and then from there it's down the hill. So the last corner before the straightaway, and then the 1-2 combination. If you can get that smooth, you'll be quick there. So, anything else?
One quick question.
One quick question.
Tony Scarletto says, do you build your engines for low-end torque or top-end high performance? Or each?
That's an interesting question. Do I build my engines for low-end torque or high-end? Anywhere we don't do a lot of engine building because the Coyote motors are so good, but it depends on the application. If it's a street car, track day car, you always have to look out for having decent bottom end and mid range, and you sacrifice a little bit of top end. But for like Roy's car that we built the engine for NASA AIX, I actually kind of lucked out. I know the engine manager at Roush Yates, and he found me the very last Daytona prototype engine that they used, and we adapted that to Roy's car, and we set that up 100% for top end. I mean, because it's racing, you're flat out. You want all your power at the top end. You give up torque at the bottom end. You still need a little bit of mid range, but you need that power between, let's say, 4,500 and 7,500. That's where you need to be. Your torque needs to be up by then, and your RPMs need to carry. The engine needs to breathe all the way up. So it just depends on the application. The nice thing about the Coyotes is we don't do much to them. We do like a cold air kit, full exhaust system, headers and exhaust, high flow exhaust, and we put on the dyno, we tune, and we get great power. We get like 420, 430, even 440 rear wheel horsepower, which is like almost 500 with almost nothing. And the motor itself kind of takes care of itself. Plus the cams are always adjusting themselves, so they always work. So the whole high end, low end boils down to camshaft choice and also port size for the exhaust. For the Windsor motor we're building for David's car, it's going to be AIX car. We're doing, rather than doing a Coyote like everybody else, didn't want to supercharge it. We're taking all aluminum Windsor 351 Windsor. We're stroking it out to 401, and it's going to be built for top end power. It's going to rev, that 4,500 to 7,500 range is where you need all your power. So it just, what are you going to do with the engine? And the interesting thing is that we're having custom headers built by George, and his recommendation, if it's a drag race car, we'd use 2-inch headers. But for a road race car, we're using 1 and 7/8. That'll give better throttle response and better torque where you need it. So I mean, there's so many things that go into high end, low end. It just boils down to what's your application, and then working the cam, heads, and exhaust to suit your needs.
Okay, this is the last one, and this will transition into the 5-day.
Okay, this is the last one, and Carrie says we will transition into the 5-day.
Okay, Alex Marin, how do you know if the tire pressure is correct for the track day conditions? Will this be covered under the 5-day course?
That's a great question. And this is something that is, people that know me, he's asking about what's the correct tire pressure. And we will get into that. I mean, I wrote a really good RTEC article on tire pressures. If you Google Kenny Brown tire temps, there's a good tech article I wrote. We'll go over that in detail because tire pressures are the most critical thing to do, and it's the really easy way to tune your car at the track. I mean, you can't make too many adjustments at the track. There's so many things going on. The one thing you can adjust is your tire pressure. And, you would be amazed at the difference between a half a pound or a pound of air will do to the handling of a car. We had one customer who, he became a believer in the whole tire temp thing, parameter, and he was at, I think, Road America, I can't remember, and he would come out, and the guy next to him, he do all his tire temps, the guy next to him had I can't remember, maybe a Cadillac or something like that, and he said, what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm setting my tire pressures and temps, and the guy, that's a waste of time. I just put them where they tell me to drive. Well, it wasn't very long. By the end of the track weekend, the guy was asking to have his tire temperatures checked, and our customer worked with him, and he took like seconds off his lap times. So it's really important. We'll get in. It's a parameter and a pressure gauge is what you need to get tire temperatures. Maybe we can get that article, a tech article, and we can post it.
Okay. In the Speed Therapy group.
In the Speed Therapy Society, we'll post that tech article. And that's what she said. This is a lead-in. So if you're not in the Speed Therapy Society, please join, because in there we have a lot more better communication options, and we've got a really cool group of like-minded people on performance, and we're seeing cool cars posted, great comments. So if you're not in Speed Therapy, you can sign up and get in. And also, if in these trying times you got friends that are kind of like sitting around bored, they're locked in, invite them. I mean, this is better than watching cartoons with your kids on Saturday morning. So, yeah, and I'll go over. We're going to go over the first critical step to transforming your driving experience, building your performance platform, part 1, which is handling suspension, and then building your performance platform, part 2, brakes, wheels, tires, cooling, and safety. And you're going to hear me always emphasize build your performance platform. And before you get at any power, build your performance platform, because if you put power in and don't do anything else, you're not going to be able to use it. You're going to spin your tires, and if you're spinning, you're not winning. So performance platform is super critical. We'll talk about dialing in and more on driving tech, and then car preparation, and then also answer questions. So I hope it's going to be an informative, fun day. I think, again, we're going to push it back a little bit because we kind of got upset with all this going on, and we have things to do. So it was going to be the 30th. It might be back a week, might be 2. It'll be posted on Speed Therapy Society, so you get all your information there. And I love the comments and pictures you guys are sending in. So, my goodness, we went a little bit longer than a half hour today.
Say hi to Sandy Dunn.
Oh, hey, hi, Sandy Dunn. Sandy's a really close friend of mine. She worked for the Lingenfelder Group, and they did, back when we first met, they did all the television broadcast for a lot of the racing series, and with the Lingner Group, and she's a super good gal. We suffered kind of like all the same lung problems at the same time, so we became sort of compadres in misery. But I got better and she got better. So we haven't seen you since I got back. We gotta connect. So hi to Sandy. And I guess with that, we're going to wrap it up for the day. We will see you next Saturday, and keep your cards and letters coming. I guess that's something I should say. But yeah, get in the Speed Therapy Society, because we're going to do a lot more things there. And I really, really appreciate the comments you guys are sending in. So, well, we'll see you next Saturday, and stay healthy. Stay safe, stay healthy. That's the important thing. See you then.